Hello and welcome to the Musicians Creating Prosperity podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Fabiana. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about one of the most important things that you can acquire as a savvy musician entrepreneur, which is your ability to detach your emotions from the external implications of what you've got going on, specifically judgment. Let's talk about judgment. Judgment really has an origin coming from being part of a verdict, being part of a sentence. The word judgment originated through this notion of imparting almost like a punishment. However, judgment also was associated historically with decision making, with having an opinion, with taking a stance and having a perspective. So when it comes to looking at what you are doing in your life or in your business, many times when you're looking at judgment from the first part of the definition that I just shared, in terms of a negativity with it or a negative bias or a negative sentence or a punishment, you can be afraid of judgment, and judgment can stop you from taking actions because you're afraid of that origin of that word, which is like punishment, someone having a negative opinion and you seeing it as something that will have a potential negative influence in yourself, in your life, in the business, and whatever you're trying to do. What I want you to look at is how about you focus on the other side of the definition of judgment, which is to have a perspective, to have an opinion, to make a decision and to take action based on that. And then when you are thinking about taking action, doing things in your business, whether it's stepping into more visibility, whether it's creating content, whether it's changing the way you work, reinventing yourself and your business. When you think about judgment from the standpoint of decision making and knowing that all you need to know is if you can have an opinion around something and you care about fixing a problem for your ideal clients, that will require decision making, that will require judgment, that will require discernment. And knowing that that's not a bad thing or a thing to be afraid of, but instead that's a sign that you believe in something, that you have a perspective, and that judgment can actually be good when you frame it in this lens. This concept alone can be so liberating. And a lot of the times, the musicians that I guide stop themselves on their tracks simply because they're afraid of what other people are going to think. And they put more pressure on themselves to appear perfect, specifically when it comes to building your offers or creating content, which always will come head to head with just opening yourself to the world, right? Because if you've followed any of the trainings that I've shared around branding and building a vision and sharing that with your audience, at the core of that philosophy is sharing who you are, right? Sharing your values, sharing your perspective, opening yourself to be seen in the world at a greater capacity than just your technical skills or just your area of expertise, but actually opening yourself up to be seen as a human being, to be seen for your strengths, for your weaknesses, for your desires, for your flaws, for all the things that you are, and sharing your humanity with the world. That takes a willingness to open yourself up and to be okay with the potential for negative judgment, with the potential for other people having an opinion. The only way you're going to be able to do that is if you're focusing on why you're doing it. What is the ultimate goal of you opening yourself up and potentially putting yourself in a position where people may have an opinion? Yes, but it could be their opinion. It doesn't mean it's yours and it doesn't represent you. And when you are able to focus on the why behind all of these things that may put you in a position of, let's say, being potentially judged by others. When I refer to the things, I'm referring to creating content, showing up on social media, creating your videos, or reaching out to that person that you thought could be potentially a great fit for your offer. And you just want to have a conversation and see how you could support them. Taking the steps that require that courage, you're only going to be able to do that if you can separate judgment from the steps that you're taking. Now, once again, why? Because ultimately, you cannot control other people's perspectives, right? People will always have an opinion. They'll have a way of seeing the world. Some people may be kind of stuck in their ways. They may be doing things because they're comfortable and they may be refusing to step out of their comfort zone because they want to stay where they are. And that's their decision, right? No judgment. And other people are more open to seeing other people step out of the box, do other things, reinvent themselves. Typically, when people have a very negative opinion towards you, towards the changes that you're making, and are wanting to impose their judgment on you, it's because something of what you're doing is triggering something in them that they may lack, or they may not have the courage and the conviction or the discernment to take those courageous steps. So it bothers them to see other people doing the thing. And so many times when you have a lot of judgment around you, it comes from a deeper cause than just your actions. It comes from people's own limiting beliefs, actions, and their own internal frustrations. And so knowing that and almost like accepting the fact that people will have opinions and some of them are going to be positive, others are going to be negative, Either way, I notice I'm not just saying negative opinions. Some people may have great things to say. They may have great opinions about what you're doing. They may be voicing their praise and their enthusiasm and support towards what you're doing. And even in those cases, your ability to stay neutral and to stay grounded and to, yes, be grateful, but not necessarily feel happy or uplifted or validated because other people are telling you you're great, but you need to have that inside of you. You need to be able to look at your own worthiness and say, I feel worthy. I deserve. I'm ready. I can do this. I have a lot to offer. People need what I have to share. And it is my duty to show up in the world and to share what I have to offer without reservations, without taboos, without filters, without worrying about other people's judgment. When you can hone that internal conviction and clarity, it becomes like a anchoring energy that people can sense, and it draws them to you in a way that they can't even explain it, because it's an energetic confidence that becomes magnetic. I want to encourage you, as you're listening to this episode or watching this episode, where in your life are you letting judgment hold you back? Right? Can you think about some places where right now you're wanting to take courageous steps, but you're stopping yourself because you're afraid of judgment? Whether it's judgment from the world, from your greater network, from your online presence, from the people in your world, in the internet, or whether it's judgment from your immediate circle, from your family, from your spouse, from your kids. Where in your life are you holding yourself back because you're afraid of judgment? And now, how can you start asking yourself, what are some ways to cope with that fear? What are some ways to perhaps look at that potential of judgment in a different angle and be able to say, well, when you have an opinion, it will always be polarizing to a certain extent. Think about it. When you have a perspective on something, you are creating a voice for your ideas. You're building a proposition. You're sharing something, whether it's something you perhaps struggled with in your career, in your life, in your business, and you found a way to overcome it, and you're bringing that solution to the market and sharing it with your audience, whether it's creating a different product or service that you know is going to make a difference in other people's lives, whatever it is that you're trying to bring to the world, it has a point of view. Think of it that way. And the point of view will always be polarizing. Always. There are going to be some people who really connect with that, very much in alignment with that perspective. They may potentially be your ideal clients who are listening to you share that perspective, that decision, that point of view. And then there's going to be other people who are going to be maybe indifferent, who that perspective will have no implication on them. They're not going to care. They're not going to have any reaction to it. It's not going to be relevant to them. And I should add a third layer, which is there are also going to be people who it bothers them. There are going to be people who watch you, who hear what you have to say, and who have a strong opinion in a different direction from what you're saying. So the good news is that when you are okay with all three scenarios and you develop your own inner compass, your own inner wisdom, your own ability to make that decision and create that discernment to know what do you stand for and what do you stand against, and what are you willing to share and why is that important, even if it can potentially be judged, and how judgment is not necessarily a death sentence, right? Judgment is just someone's opinion about what you're doing. It doesn't reflect your perspective. It doesn't have to define you. And you are able to make decisions with that confidence, right? And that acceptance that other people may or may not like it. And again, as I said before, even for those who love it, who respond enthusiastically, who come to you with praises and all the encouragement, your job is to stay neutral. That's what I've developed throughout my entire life. And the more that I focus on that, the lighter I feel, the more energized I feel to take action and to not be afraid and to not let myself overthink things. One of the things that stops so many musicians when they're thinking about judgment is that because they want to be perfect and they don't want to risk being judged in a negative way, they enter a state of analysis paralysis. They overthink things, whether it's building their websites, whether it's designing their offers, whether it's creating their content to share to the world, because they're so afraid of that negative judgment. They start overthinking and trying to be perfect. And that desire for perfectionism can be incredibly crippling, because if you are not taking action, you're not going to see results. And if you're frozen because you want to take perfect action, chances are you're not going to take enough action or frequent action. You're going to always have a delay between when your ideas spark and when you actually put them into implementation. There's going to be a huge delay, which is going to dilute the effectiveness of your actions. Delay will dilute the effectiveness of your actions when you're focusing on perfection instead of progress, instead of making that next move, taking that step. So this episode is really important because I really feel that it's not enough of a conversation for entrepreneurs to understand how critical it is that you control your own reaction to the judgments that you have around you. You cannot try to control other people's behaviors, other people's reactions. If you are focusing on pleasing others and creating things that you feel are going to make others feel comfortable or happy or approve you, you're basically trying to influence your external network, your external, connections with a level of dependency on their results and their responses. And that will stop you from owning your voice, from owning your truth, and from being able to unapologetically share what you believe in and why. Yeah. And when you are very compelled to bring yourself in your full sense with everything you have to say about what you believe in, that actually draws truest fans to you. That's the actual energy that gets people fired up and says, yes, this resonated with me. I know I like this person. I want to talk to this person. I want to connect with this person. This person speaks my language. That's where the notion of true fans comes into play. But you can't do that if you're trying to be vanilla, just kind of stay middle point for everyone and trying to keep everyone happy. So when you start feeling this level of perhaps anxiety around other people's opinions, whether it's before you're going to create a piece of content online, a blog post, an email, social media captions, or whether you are trying to have perhaps a conversation where you would invite someone to work with you. In many cases, when it comes to sales conversations, enrollment conversations, we can focus so much on avoiding judgment that we end up not being effective communicators, not effective leaders. Because ultimately, sales is all about leadership. It's about being able to guide the other person as long as you know you can help them. It's about guiding them to the next stage of what they need to get the results they're looking for. And if you are afraid of being judged from the people you're speaking with, then you're not going to be willing to lead that person to the full extent of what they need because you're going to try to be too gentle and avoid that judgment. In fact, I'll share a story with you about how I'm saying this from my own experience, okay? And why judgment can be so crippling in so many areas, not just creating content, but also in sales and communication in general. One of the lessons that I learned throughout all these years of just learning about sales and communication and learning how to be a better leader when it comes to influencing the people in my community, one of the things that I've come to know is that when you focus on trying to please the people in your world, when you focus on trying to keep the prospect that you're speaking with about your offer, when you're focused on trying to keep them comfortable just so that they don't feel that you are salesy or that you are pushy or don't interpret your actions as a negative sales experience, that can be backfire big time. Because ultimately, when you are in a conversation with someone about working with you and then trying to, showing them a potential path, 99% of the time, what's best for your clients will be out of their comfort zone. There's just no way around it. The reason why they're coming to you is because they are stuck and they are doing things in a certain way. They've reached a level of comfort and they're staying there. And that's why they're stuck. Whether it's learning music, whether it's learning how to build a career, whether it's learning about performance anxiety, whether it's learning about the right technique, whatever it is, they're there because they're stuck and they've gotten to a level of comfort in their lives. And that's all they know. And in order to get out of that problem situation, they're going to need to learn different skills, unlearn maybe some things that they were thinking about, and become challenged in a good way. But it will require stepping out of their comfort zone. But here's the trick. Most people will resist getting out of their comfort zone. Most people will have a problem getting out of their comfort zone. They will not embrace it open-heartedly. Oh, yes, let's go. I'll push myself out of my comfort zone. It's a natural preservation mechanism of our brains. It's a survival. We are wired to want to stay inside of our comfort zone. It's just a very primitive ancestral wiring of our brains. It's a self-preservation mechanism. However, your goal when you are talking to someone and sharing about what you could do and how you could help them, you need to be ready for them to be resisting that step that may require them to be out of their comfort zone. And in my case, I remember having a conversation once where I was at that point with a prospect who, I was proposing to take a certain step and start working in this way and following a certain set of plans. And that prospect was uncomfortable. I could tell, and was pushing back because they were just not comfortable with the fact that it would require certain things like committing time, committing an investment, maybe having difficult conversations with disapproving spouses who were not going to understand, or whatever it was. And I remember I easily allowed that prospect to just end the conversation. As soon as the prospect said, well, this feels a little uncomfortable. I'm not sure I'm going to take this step, or I don't know if I want to move forward. I remember being very laid back and like, okay, well, that's fine. Whatever you decide, just let me know. And I just released that person with no leaning into true leadership, with no challenging them from a place of love, of empathy, none of that. Just being like, okay, well, if you don't want to do it, that's okay. And what that caused was that person left and never found the solution they needed and was probably still stuck to this day because they're still doing the things the way they've always done. And I remember after that conversation, I realized what I had done is I had protected my ego in the process of having that conversation because I was more concerned with not being judged, with not having that person create an opinion about me or think that I was salesy or pushy or whatever. And I let that person go. I let that person continue on their life with the same problem that they came with me for. And I let them just go. And I know there's a high probability, okay, that that person is still stuck to this day. But I was more concerned about the judgment than about the leadership. I was more concerned about preventing and somehow protecting my identity, my ego, and not appearing pushy or salesy than I was about really solving that person's problem. There's a great analogy that is often used in sales trainings, which is if you imagine a dramatic scenario where there's a fire in a building and the firefighter has to come into the building and grab the person who's there who can't escape. Let's say it's a kid or a toddler or whatever. Or you're looking at someone who's about to cross the street and they're about to be hit by a car. And you see that imminent danger, that imminent situation that will hurt that person or keep them stuck. Are you going to have any problems being able to take whatever step is necessary to get them out of that situation? No, because you know it's in their best interest. You know, if you're a fighter, you just grab this person out of the building and get them out, even if that person has an opinion about how you grab them or what you did. Or if you're grabbing a kid from crossing the street and you're holding them like, hey, be careful. Oh, yeah, I didn't want you to hold me. You have to take the action that's going to get that person uncomfortable, but it's in their best interest, right? The same thing happens in leadership and in sales conversations. And when you're too afraid of being judged, okay, coming back to this topic of judgment, when you're too concerned about being judged by others and you are protecting your ego, you're protecting how you're being viewed, and you put that as the priority versus actually speaking the truth that you know that person needs to hear and that will feel uncomfortable, and that unless they're willing to listen to that and move past that uncomfortableness, they're always going to stay stuck. When you can care more about helping that person than you can care about what that person is going to think about you, that's when you've uncovered the true mastery of leadership and of building an online business and any business that will truly make a difference. And you'll do it in a way that feels in alignment. You'll do it in a way that feels freeing, that feels liberating, and that above all, makes an impact and helps you make this world a better place. Because if you're here, you're listening to this podcast, you have a gift, you have knowledge, you have expertise that needs to be shared. And until you don't release that fear of judgment and you're not able to let go of the perspective of other people's opinions and whether or not they approve or not, and you can liberate yourself from all of that, you're always going to be playing small. You're always going to be trying to protect. You're always going to be lacking the true leadership that is required for any type of influence and communication, whether it's creating content, whether it's being on camera, making a podcast or creating a video, whether it's having a conversation with a potential clients, it's all the same. If you can detach your relationship from the fear of judgment and you can separate that emotional charge that you may have right now when you think about being judged, and you can approach that with a sense of neutrality, a sense of gravity, a sense of just understanding why you're doing what you're doing and being okay with good judgment, with neutral judgment, and with negative judgment. Being okay with all three will unlock unlimited potential for you, for your business, for your life, and for everything else, including your relationship and your health. So I hope this helps you perhaps reconsider your own relationship with judgment and how are you responding to the judgment that you have in your life, which we all do. And most importantly, how are you, like, what are your inner voices, your inner thoughts? How are you talking to yourself about what you're doing? Are you judging yourself? Watch out. It's important. If you're judging yourself and constantly framing your actions and behaviors and saying this was good, this was bad, the same applies to your own internal judgment than it does to external judgment. It's judgment no matter how you look at it. Think about this. I hope it helps. Think about where it's stopping you and look for ways to change that and reverse that starting today. And I guarantee you, you're going to feel so much better. And with a lighter energy, you can grow your business and enjoy it so much more. That's what we're here for anyway, isn't it? Hope you enjoy this episode. Let me know what your takeaways are. And if you're curious about how you can develop a better strategy and a better mindset component to avoiding all of these fears and hesitations and blocks, book a call. There's going to be a link below this episode in the show notes. I would love to talk to you and be able to show you perhaps where in your life you're letting judgment or any other block stop you from living your fullest potential. Until next time, let's prosper together.